Your fingers trace the cold metal body of a 1953 Leica 3 as you lift it from the velvet-lined case where it's lived for the past 6 months. The mechanical precision of the film advance lever clicks with the satisfying weight of German engineering, while the leather grip bears the worn patina of decades in other photographers' hands. You raise the viewfinder to your eye and peer through glass that once captured moments now lost to history, feeling the substantial heft of analog craftsmanship that no digital camera can replicate. Then someone asks why you need another camera when your phone takes better pictures than anything from the 50s. The question stings because they're technically right. Your iPhone produces sharper images with perfect exposure in any lighting condition. They see expensive nostalgia for obsolete technology, impractical collecting that prioritizes sentiment over performance. You feel something they can't grasp. The difference between taking pictures and making photographs, between digital convenience and mechanical meditation, between consuming images and preserving the tools that created visual history. The world sees vintage camera collectors as stubborn traditionalists clinging to inferior equipment. You know you're maintaining a connection to photography's soul that digital culture systematically erases. The weight that digital cameras. Never had you hold a 1968 Nikon F in your hands, and its solid metal construction communicates seriousness of purpose that plastic camera bodies can never match. Every control is mechanical, deliberate, requiring conscious decisions about aperture, shutter speed, and focus that transform photography from automatic documentation into intentional art-making. The mirror slap sounds like a gunshot, announcing each frame as a commitment rather than a casual capture. Dr. Matthew Crawford's research on skilled labor shows that working with mechanical tools creates different neural pathways than operating digital interfaces. His studies reveal that physical manipulation of mechanical systems produces deeper satisfaction and stronger skill development than screen-based interactions. When you adjust the aperture ring on a vintage lens, you're engaging motor learning and tactile feedback that digital cameras eliminate entirely. But here's what even camera enthusiasts often miss. You're not just choosing analog over digital. You're choosing limitation over infinite options, scarcity over abundance. Dr. Sheena Iyengar's research on choice psychology demonstrates that constraints often increase creativity rather than limit it. Your vintage camera's fixed ISO, limited frames per roll, and manual controls force creative problem-solving that automatic cameras eliminate. The hunt that eBay can't replace. You spend weekends at camera shows, estate sales, and antique shops, searching for lenses that haven't been made in 40 years, or camera bodies with specific serial numbers that mark significant production runs. The thrill isn't just in acquiring the camera, it's in the detective work, the research, the possibility that you might discover something rare or historically significant that previous owners didn't recognize. Dr. Russell Belk's research on collecting behavior reveals that the search process creates stronger psychological attachment than the possession itself. The effort invested in finding, evaluating, and acquiring vintage cameras transforms them from mere objects into trophies that represent your expertise and dedication. Digital cameras available with one-click ordering provide no comparable psychological reward. This explains why serious collectors often enjoy incomplete cameras or project bodies that need restoration. The investment of time and skill required to bring a broken camera back to life creates ownership bonds that buying new equipment cannot replicate. When you spent 3 months searching for the exact selenium meter for your 1959 Canonette, you weren't just completing a camera, you were completing a personal quest that gave that tool meaning beyond its photographic capabilities. The history that lives in your hands. You research the provenance of each camera in your collection, learning which conflicts they documented, which famous photographers used identical models, which technological innovations they represented. A 1942 Leica 3C might have recorded World War II, while a 1970s Pentax K1000 taught photography to an entire generation of art students. Each camera carries cultural DNA that connects you to photography's evolution as both art and documentation. Dr. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's research on object relationships shows that people derive identity satisfaction from possessing items with rich historical associations. Your vintage cameras aren't just tools. They're cultural artifacts that connect you to the tradition of photographers who created visual history with identical equipment. Using a 1965 Nikon F puts you in direct lineage with photojournalists who covered Vietnam, civil rights protests, and moon landings. But modern digital cameras become obsolete within years, creating no comparable historical connection. The camera that seems cutting edge today will be electronic waste tomorrow, carrying no cultural weight, inspiring no stories, connecting to no photographic legacy worth preserving. The ritual that instant photography destroyed you. Load a 36 exposure roll of film with the careful attention that each frame deserves, knowing that every shot costs money and cannot be immediately reviewed. The film advance lever requires physical engagement with each photograph. The light meter demands technical understanding, and the inability to see results immediately forces you to trust your skills and intuition. Photography becomes meditation rather than documentation. Dr. Adam Ghazali's research on attention and focus shows that delayed gratification improves both learning and satisfaction compared to instant feedback. Film photography's built-in delays, advancing manually, waiting for development, making contact sheets, create psychological investment that digital photography's immediate review eliminates. Each vintage camera forces you to slow down, think carefully, and engage completely with the photographic process. The counterintuitive truth is that vintage cameras' limitations actually enhance the creative experience by requiring active participation rather than passive documentation. When your 1976 Olympus OM1 forces you to meter manually and focus by hand, you're not struggling with inferior technology. You're engaging with photography as craft rather than convenience. The community that megapixels can't build your vintage camera collection creates social connections that digital photography communities cannot replicate. Fellow collectors share repair techniques, lens recommendations, and historical knowledge that spans decades of photographic evolution. Camera shows become gatherings where expertise is demonstrated through possession and deep technical knowledge rather than portfolio reviews or Instagram followers. Dr. Grant McCracken's research on material culture shows that shared collecting interests create stronger social bonds than shared activities alone. Your knowledge of Zeiss coating formulations, Leica production variations, or Hasselblad accessory compatibility signals membership in a community united by appreciation for mechanical precision and photographic heritage. The difference becomes clear at photography meetups. Digital photographers discuss megapixel counts and autofocus speed, while vintage camera users debate the character differences between Summicron and Summilux lenses manufactured decades apart. One conversation focuses on specifications that change annually. The other preserves knowledge that becomes more valuable with time. The sound that silicon sensors never make you advance the film lever on a 1969 Pentax Spotmatic, and the mechanical symphony of gears, springs, and precision engineering creates audio feedback that confirms proper operation. The mirror slap, shutter click, and film advance generate sounds that photographers recognized for generations as confirmation that the camera is functioning correctly. These acoustic signals create confidence and connection that silent digital operation cannot match. Dr. Charles Spence's research on sensory marketing shows that distinctive sounds create stronger emotional connections to products than visual or tactile features alone. The specific acoustic signature of each vintage camera model becomes part of the user experience, creating audio memory associations that digital cameras' artificial shutter sounds cannot replicate. Modern cameras simulate these mechanical sounds through speakers, but the artificial recreation only emphasizes what's been lost. When your 1974 Canon FTB clicks the shutter, you're hearing the actual mechanical event that creates the photograph, not a digital approximation of what cameras used to sound like. The economics that digital promises made false. Your vintage cameras appreciate in value while digital cameras depreciate rapidly, making collecting a financially rational decision disguised as aesthetic preference. A well-maintained 1950s Leica costs more today than when it was new, while the most expensive digital camera from 5 years ago is now worth a fraction of its original price. You're not spending money on cameras, you're investing in mechanical assets that increase in value as they become rarer. Dr. Dilip Soman's research on mental accounting reveals that people feel differently about expenditures that maintain or increase value compared to pure consumption costs. Your vintage camera purchases represent capital allocation rather than expense, creating psychological satisfaction that digital camera purchases cannot match. But there's something deeper happening economically. Digital cameras require constant upgrading to remain current, creating perpetual expense cycles that vintage cameras escape entirely. A 1960 Nikon F works exactly as well today as it did 60 years ago, while digital cameras become obsolete through software updates that their hardware cannot support. Here's the counterintuitive truth that most people miss about vintage camera collecting. It's not about rejecting technological progress. It's about recognizing what progress has eliminated rather than improved. You collect vintage cameras not because you're stuck in the past, but because you understand what the digital future has sacrificed for convenience, which reveals something profound about human psychology. We need some tools that outlast their creators, that exist independently of corporate support cycles, that represent permanent rather than provisional ownership. In a world where everything becomes obsolete by design, vintage camera collecting represents the radical act of believing that some things should improve with age rather than become worthless through innovation. In the end, that 1953 Leica in your hands isn't just taking photographs. It's preserving the possibility that tools can be companions rather than consumables, that craftsmanship can be permanent rather than disposable, that the act of creating images can be as important as the images themselves. The camera becomes a symbol of every relationship we're losing to planned obsolescence, every skill we're surrendering to automation, every piece of tangible heritage we're trading for digital convenience that disappears with the next software update.